The movie begins in September 1939 in Warsaw, Poland, at the start of World War II. We are introduced to Władysław Szpilman, a pianist who works at a local radio station. The German army has quickly defeated the Polish army, and the radio station where Szpilman plays is suddenly attacked. Everyone in the building panics and tries to escape. As Szpilman is leaving, he meets his friend Zurich, who introduces him to his sister, Dorota. Dorota compliments Szpilman's piano playing, and they are immediately attracted to each other. Later, when Szpilman returns home, he finds his parents, brother, and two sisters packing their things to leave Poland. They discuss whether it's possible for them to flee Poland successfully, but then they hear the news that the UK and France have declared war on Germany. The family is hopeful that once the Allies are able to fight against Germany, the war will end, so they decide to stay. Unfortunately, things don't go as they had hoped. In Warsaw, the situation for Jews quickly worsens. German Nazis invade the city and impose strict rules on the Jewish population. Jews are only allowed to keep a limited amount of money, they are forbidden from using the sidewalks, and are not allowed to eat in restaurants. Additionally, they are required to wear a large symbol on their coats whenever they go outside. Szpilman meets Dorota again, and she follows him around Warsaw to learn about the injustices that Jews are facing under the Nazi regime. Businesses that used to be friendly to Jews now refuse to serve them. Two Nazi officers even assault Szpilman's father when he protests against being stopped from using the sidewalk. The situation becomes even more dire when Jewish families are forced to move to a new district created by the Nazis. This district is separated from the rest of the city by a wall. Szpilman's family, who were once wealthy, now live in poverty, although they are still better off than many others in the crowded and disease-ridden ghetto. Szpilman and his brother Henrik are forced to sell books to earn money for their family, but they struggle to find buyers. In the next scene, a Jewish police officer and one of Henrik's friends, Heller, visit Szpilman's new home and suggest that they join the Jewish army to protect their family. However, Henrik refuses, not wanting to fight against his own people and mistreat them. Szpilman also declines, saying that he has his own responsibilities. Later, Szpilman is shown playing the piano in a restaurant in the ghetto where wealthy Jews gather. Meanwhile, life in the ghetto continues to worsen, and many Jews are dying every day from sickness, hunger, and violence by German soldiers. Szpilman is unhappy with his job and wants to help his community. After work, he visits an old friend who distributes illegal newspapers, hoping to join the resistance against the Nazis. However, his friend refuses, saying that musicians are not effective in revolting and speaking out. On his way back home, Szpilman tries to save a boy from being beaten by Nazi soldiers while trying to escape under a wall. Unfortunately, the boy becomes unconscious, but Szpilman manages to pull him to safety. Late at night, while Szpilman's family is having dinner, they witness German soldiers entering a house across the street and capturing a family. The leader of the soldiers demands that the family greet them, but when the elderly man in a wheelchair doesn't comply, they throw him off the balcony. The rest of the family is brought down and shot to death, with the injured ones being run over by a jeep. Szpilman's family is terrified and disturbed by this horrifying scene. In the next scene, after rescuing Henrik from police custody, Szpilman learns that they need employment certificates to save their family from being sent to a labor camp. Szpilman asks his friend Jehuda for help, who in turn instructs Meszurek, a former soldier, to assist Szpilman in obtaining the certificates. Majurek, with Meshurek's help, manages to get an employment certificate for Szpilman's father from a clothing factory. Despite having the certificate in March 1942, the family is forced to leave their home and is transferred to a warehouse with other Jews. Sadly, one day the family is selected to be sent to a concentration camp. The rest of the family is taken to Umschlagplatz to await transport, while Henrike and Helena are chosen and taken away by German soldiers. The following day, when the family arrives at a train station, they are surprised to see Helena and Henrike there, and they are reunited. The father uses their last remaining money to buy a piece of candy, which he divides into 6 small pieces to share with each family member. Shortly after, a transport train arrives and all the Jewish families are instructed to board. As Szpilman walks towards the train with his family, Heller pulls him out of the queue and urges him to run away. Szpilman is confused and wants to stay with his family, but Heller insists that he has saved Spielmann's life and advises him to escape. With no other choice, Spielmann reluctantly runs away while the rest of his family boards the train and leaves. Afterwards, Spielmann goes to meet Jehuda, but tragically discovers his family dead outside their house. He then goes to the restaurant where he used to work, only to find it empty and abandoned. Just as he is about to leave, his boss, Benek, calls him from a hiding place and tells him to come inside. Benek explains that they need to hide there for a few days until one of his soldier friends arrives to rescue them. Later on, Benek and Spielmann blend in with the small group of Jews remaining in the ghetto. Their task is to demolish the ghetto's brick walls and construct apartment buildings for the incoming non-Jewish residents. As the Jews labor under harsh conditions to rebuild the walls, Spielmann unexpectedly spots his old friend Janina Godluska, who quickly vanishes into the crowd. In a subsequent scene, Spielmann learns that some Jews are planning a rebellion against the Nazis. He aids them by smuggling weapons into the ghetto. Unfortunately, he drops a pile of bricks one day and is brutally beaten by a Nazi officer. He is then reassigned to distribute construction materials to the workers. In this role, he continues to smuggle weapons and sacks of potatoes, which are to be delivered to resistance fighters outside the wall. One day, a German officer nearly catches Spielmann, suspecting him of hiding something in a sack of beans. After this close call, Spielmann decides to escape and try his luck in a bigger city. With Majerek's help, Spielmann escapes from the labor camp and finds Janina and her husband, who welcome him warmly. After providing Spielmann with food and clothes, Janina's husband introduces him to his caretaker, Gebczynski, who provides Spielmann with a place to hide for one night. The next day, Gebczynski guides Spielmann to an empty apartment near the ghetto wall where he can survive on smuggled food. However, Gebczynski warns him to remain quiet, as the building also houses numerous non-Jews who believe the apartment is unoccupied. From the apartment, Spielmann witnesses part of the Jewish ghetto uprising of April-May 1943, for which he had helped smuggle guns. After a few days, he watches the revolt again, but sadly, it's being crushed and the supporters are being killed by Nazi soldiers. In the next scene, Gebczynski arrives at the apartment and advises Spielmann to escape, as Nazi soldiers could arrive at any moment. Spielmann, however, chooses to stay as he feels safe inside the apartment. Gebczynski gives him an emergency address and leaves, strongly advising Spielmann not to be captured alive by the Nazis. Several months pass and Spielmann is still living in the same apartment. One day, in a desperate search for food, he breaks several plates. The loud noise gives him away and he is forced to flee the apartment when an angry non-Jewish woman suspects him of being Jewish. After successfully escaping from the apartment, Spielmann goes to the emergency address given to him by Gebczynski. When he arrives there, he unexpectedly meets Dorada, who is now married and pregnant. Spielmann asks about her brother, and she tells him that he is dead. After Dorada's husband arrives, Spielmann is given some food and then hidden in another abandoned apartment. There's a piano in the apartment, but Spielmann is not allowed to play it as he must remain silent. In the beginning, he is well fed by his new caretaker Zalas, but after a few weeks, Zalas becomes neglectful and stops providing food. As a result, Spielmann contracts jaundice and becomes extremely weak. A few weeks later, Dorado and her husband visit him and find that he is seriously ill. They quickly call a doctor who examines Spielmann and advises him to rest. In the next scene, Spielmann regains his strength just in time to witness the broader 1944 Warsaw uprising, in which the Polish people attempt to regain control of their city. Shortly thereafter, the Germans invade the building, forcing him to leave. The Polish people had hoped that the advancing Soviet Red Army would come to their aid, but unfortunately the Russians did not arrive in time. This allowed the Germans to suppress the uprising and forcibly remove the entire population of Warsaw. Spielmann finds shelter in an abandoned hospital located across the street from his previous hiding place. Later, he leaves the hospital and jumps back over the wall into the ghetto, which has now become a desolate wasteland of bricks and debris, since the Germans decided to reduce Warsaw to ashes. Spielmann hides in this desolate landscape, scavenging for food among the burned-out buildings, and continues to take shelter there until one night he is discovered by a Nazi officer named Captain Wilm Hossenfeld. Frightened, Spielman pleads for mercy, revealing that he is a professional pianist. When the captain asks him to prove it, Spielman plays a beautiful song on the piano, the first time he has done so in years. Hossenfeld is moved by Spielman's performance and helps him hide in the attic. He even provides Spielman with regular food supplies in an effort to keep him alive. When the Russian army finally approaches Warsaw, Hossenfeld and his staff are forced to abandon the residence. Spielman receives a final delivery of supplies from Hossenfeld as well as his overcoat. He inquires about Spielman's surname, which is similar to Spielman, the German word for a pianist. Hossenfeld tells him he'll listen for Spielman on the radio. Before leaving, he also informs Spielman that he only needs to live in fear for a few more days, as the Red Army will soon take over Warsaw. A few days later, Spielman spots Polish partisans and walks outside in joy to greet his comrades. They mistakenly believe he's a German after seeing his coat, which Hossenfeld gave him, and attempt to shoot him. Fortunately, after he surrenders and comes forward, the officers recognize him as a Polish citizen and cease fire. The scene then fast forwards a few months, where Hossenfeld is one of the detainees in a destitute Russian POW camp. Nearby, a group of Polish Jews have just been liberated, and when Hossenfeld learns that one of them is a musician, he walks to the fence and tells him that he assisted Spielman. He then asks him to persuade Spielman to return the favor before a Russian soldier forces him back to the ground. A few days later, the Polish musician brings Spielman to the place where Hossenfeld had been kept. Sadly, when they arrive, the entire camp has been relocated without leaving any trace. Unable to help his friend, Spielman returns to the radio station to play the piano. In the final part of the movie, it is revealed that Hossenfeld died in a Soviet prison in 1952, and Spielman lived to the age of 88 before he passed away in Poland in 2000. The movie concludes with Władysław Spielman joyously performing Chopin's Polonaise Brillante in concert with a full orchestra. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.